Hello and welcome to Not Another Business Podcast, where we break down business news and cultural events according to rules we've entirely made up. I'm KJ Miller, ex-corporate consultant and current CEO and co-founder of Minted Cosmetics.
And I'm Daniela Dektar-McCarthy, ex-corporate lawyer and current general counsel at Ness. And fun fact, KJ and I have been friends since our Harvard acapella days because we are that cool, folks.
Mm-hmm.
Today on the show, we are talking about Beyonce's Ivy Park and Adidas officially parting ways. Because KJ really wants to talk about it.
Oh, you know I do. You know that I've got to talk about this, not only because Beyonce is the queen, her majesty, and we should follow and talk about everything she does, but also I think just generally we've seen a lot of celebrity brands recently rise and fall in the last few years. And I just think it's kind of interesting to take a look at who's winning and who's faltering and, you know, all the reasons why.
Yeah, really interesting topic. I'm glad you picked it. We will get to it right after our shameless plug.
Okay, folks, this week I am plugging something other than Minted Cosmetics.
What?
I know. And the thing I'm plugging is this podcast. That's right. I'm plugging our podcast because Daniela and I have made the decision to get a bit more serious about growing this podcast. And so I just want to take a minute to ask all of you, our wonderful and very loyal listeners, we do look at the numbers each week, to tell a friend. Tell a friend, tell your mom, tell your sister, tell your cousin about the podcast, because we've decided we really like doing this and we want to do it in a bit more of a formal sort of way. So, you know, if you like what you're hearing, help us do that.
I love this plug. What a great plug. I will add to it. If you have feedback for us, share it too. What can we do better?
Yeah.
Let us know. And please do share it because I would love to just podcast my years away.
It is a nice life. And I think it's funny because I don't remember how much we've talked about how we started this podcast, but it started as I think we were in a pool actually. When I mentioned I really want to do a podcast, I think it'd be a lot of fun. And then you were like, oh yeah, I think I could get behind that. And then a few days later you texted me and you were like, I'm in, let's do it. And so it really did just start as us as friends wanting to do something together. And that's still what it is. We're still friends and we still like doing it. But I think as it's grown and as we've sort of found our groove, we've realized, hey, there's something here that we would like to do, maybe even in a professional sort of capacity. So yeah, we just would love it if you told a friend all about it.
Love it. Tell a friend.
All right. And with that, let's get back to the show. Okay, it's time for It Just Makes Sense, our segment where we tell you about a business that we think just makes sense. So, Danny, what business are we shouting out this week?
Okay, I am shouting out Calm, the Calm app, if people are familiar with it. This is not a nascent business. It's been around and they've been around for a reason, as I have come to appreciate in this past week in particular, but the month at large, I would say. I've been a subscribed member for 3 years now. I pay a $70 annual fee. And in moments of stress, it is my everything. This month has been so intense, this week in particular, and I have been able to listen to a mindfulness meditation that's specific to walking. I've listened to my mindfulness meditation as I've slept, as I've gone to sleep. I've listened to mindfulness meditation while I've exercised and stretched. I've listened to rain sounds just to help me focus. There's such a variety of content on this app. And for people who are not master meditators, who've come to this idea of mindfulness practice later on in life, it really helps get you started. And I can feel it in other parts of my day, keeping me calmer. And I just think I love products that actually fulfill their stated goals. And that's what the Calm app does for me. So for anyone who's feeling a little extra stressed, maybe more than usual, I highly recommend checking out their content. It's been a while since I've been a new member. I'm sure there's some kind of free something or other, free trial period. I highly recommend checking it out.
Now, here's my question about the Calm app, because I too have been under a lot of stress, as I've texted you and you've texted me. It's a stressful time. Are the meditations, like when you're doing a guided meditation, are you actually meditating? Like, are you sitting still, feet on the floor, eyes closed, or are you like, I don't know, washing the dishes or like doing other stuff? Like, how are you participating in these?
Well, so this is what I love about the Calm app, because they really do have a range that I think, you know, you could probably find the dishes mindfulness meditation, 5-minute, 10-minute, 15-minute. I have done the beginner, or a beginner meditation series, because by the way, they have multiple of these, right? You can find whether you like the woman with the Australian voice or the man with the Southern voice, like whatever it is, you can find like many different versions for the same purpose. But I've actually really loved this past week, the walking meditations. So I have, given myself a goal of just getting out to walk a little bit more, like letting the sun and vitamin D hit my skin. But I also want to do this meditation. You can do like a walking meditation. And they have like starting from a short of 5 minutes to going for an hour. Now I didn't have time for the hour, but I did a 5-minute mindfulness walk. And so you don't necessarily need to be just seated is not a word, seated doing nothing. Although they have that obviously. And some of the mindfulness is truly like before you're falling asleep. I mean, that's great.
Yeah.
You got to go to sleep at some point.
Yeah.
So I really like that they have content that you don't need to create a time out of your day to meditate if that's not already a part of what you do.
Right. Okay. I love it. Well, maybe I'll give it a try. It does sound like it would be really helpful, just given this time of stress that we're both in.
They just recently got rid of the Reggae on page one, but let me tell you, and I love my husband, but falling asleep to the voice of Reggae on page really did it for me for a while.
That is amazing. I didn't know that was a thing, but okay. Well, now I have even more incentive to sign up. Love it.
KJ, hit us with the facts. How did we reach this divorce between Beyonce and Adidas?
Yes. Well, a bit of history on the brand. So before launching with Adidas, Beyonce originally launched Ivy Park, which is, of course, her athleisure line, as a joint venture with Topshop. So in March 2016, she co-founded the brand with retail magnate Sir Philip Green, and as a joint venture with Topshop. But then 2 years later, she gained full ownership of the brand. She essentially bought it back because Green ended up in a lot of hot water after some allegations of sexual harassment and racial abuse came out about him. So Beyonce said, let me just take my brand right on back. I do not want to be associated with this. So she spent the money. She bought the brand. Then, none of us knew exactly what was going to happen from that point. Then a year later, we find out Beyonce announces she is collabing with Adidas now. So at first it was a collab with Topshop, a joint venture with Topshop. Now she announced in 2019, actually, I am going to do a collab with Adidas. And at the time she called it the partnership of a lifetime. And so since then, she has been steadily launching seasonal lines under the sort of Adidas Ivy Park name. Now, things started off really very well. So in January 2020, I don't know if you remember this campaign, but I do. In January 2020, the pre-sale for the first Ivy Park collection sold under Adidas website was so successful that the clothes sold out in 6 minutes. Okay.
Wow.
6 minutes, the whole thing was sold out. And
did you try and buy?
I did try and buy. I was unsuccessful. I didn't make it in the first 6 minutes. And then within a day, the line also started selling out in offline locations like select Adidas stores, Bloomingdale's, Nordstrom, Foot Locker. A lot of places had the line and a lot of them sold out very, very quickly. And the reason I remember this campaign so well is because Beyonce, the marketing genius she is, she sent the full line to so many celebrities, but not just the celebrities you might think she would send it to. Like, you know, if Kelly Rowland popped up with it, you'd be like, okay, yep, that makes sense. Yeah. You know, the people that she kicks it with. No, I'm talking about everybody. Like Reese Witherspoon got a line. I was like, have y'all even ever met? Like, just people you didn't expect. It was all over Instagram. Every celebrity. And it just was so smart because every celebrity was wearing Beyonce's brand, right? So I remember that. I remember it being big, big, big. And at the time, Matt Powell, who was the senior footwear analyst at NPD Group, predicted that the Ivy Park Adidas collab, in his words, have the potential to be larger than Yeezy, which at the time, Yeezy was also in a collaboration with Adidas, or Kanye was in a collaboration with Adidas. That was the high, right, for this Ivy Park Adidas collab. Things start to go south from there. So in 2020, you have the pre-sale that sells out, all the you know, commotion. In 2021, sales were 93 million. And then by 2022, sales had dipped over 50% to 40 million. And keep in mind, in 2022, Adidas was forecasting this brand to be at 250 million by that point, right? Because they just seen it grow. They saw it grow from, I don't have the 2020 numbers, but I'm assuming 2020 was close to 2021. So somewhere around that $100 million mark. So they were forecasting by 2022, they'd get to 250 million. And instead last year they brought in 40 million. Now, first of all, $40 million is just a number, is nothing to sneeze at, but the added wrinkle here is that no matter what, under this contract, Beyonce gets paid $20 million a year in annual compensation, right? So if you're only bringing in 40 million top line and half of it is going to Beyonce, I don't have to look at your P&L to know you are losing money, okay? I don't have to look at that P&L to know y'all are losing money, because she's not just getting the 20 million, she's also getting a cut of every sale. So this...
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so
that's
this
really bad for Adidas.
100%, because she owns the brand, right? So they're paying her the 20 million essentially to be the spokesperson and the, you know, to be out on Instagram talking about Ivy Park, but she owns the brand. So I wouldn't be surprised if she was getting more than 50% of every sale, honestly, but I know she's getting a cut. And so it was widely reported that Adidas was losing a lot of money, particularly in the year of 2022 on this collab. And so they decided not to move forward and renew the contract. So that brings us to now, which is the fact that they have officially announced, Adidas has officially announced they won't be moving forward with the Ivy Park collaboration. Now, what's being
is this a just non-renewal of their partnership that was like coming up for expiration, or is this an early termination? Do you know?
My understanding is that it's a non-renewal because the current contract was set to end from what I've read this year. Okay. And so, but I think, you know, obviously had it been going well, I think both parties would have loved to continue on. So it is just a non-renewal. The media is reporting creative differences as the main driver. I think that's like the narrative that certainly I'm guessing Beyonce's team wants out there, that there are creative differences and that she's excited to go her own way, because it's worth noting she will maintain exclusive rights and control over the brand now that they're splitting. So I'm sure from her perspective, that's the story they went out there. And it might be true, right? Along with the fact that sales have been somewhat dismal, there probably is some creative differences between the two teams. Either way, it's clear sales haven't been what they wanted them to be or what they forecasted them to be. And now they're splitting. I would just like to say, though, before we go on, and I would like to state it for the record that I strongly believe any shortcomings of the Ivy Park Adidas collab are solely the fault of Adidas, okay? And that Beyonce did no wrong. She did everything right, obviously. So I just want that on the record.
Okay. All right. I'm glad that's on the record.
Yes, me too.
All right. It sounds like by and large, the collab just didn't bring in the sales Adidas was expecting. And so that's why they're parting ways. You mentioned at the top, though, that there's a lot to learn, not just from Beyonce and her collab, but from other celebrity brands that have recently launched. Do you want to tell us more about that?
Yeah. So, I keep up with the celebs and the things that they're launching. And it just strikes me. So celebrities launching products is nothing new. That's been going on for years and years and years. But it really has struck me how many celebs, and I would call it the last 5 years, have launched brands that no one cares about. So as far as I can tell, nobody cares. So just a few that come to mind for me. Did you know Brad Pitt launched a skincare line? Had you
I
heard
absolutely
about that?
did not. Nope.
Yeah. And and the reason you don't know is because nobody cares. It is called Le Domaine. And it is extremely expensive. A serum is going to run you $360 in this man's line.
Well, maybe that's why I haven't heard. They've identified that I'm not their target market. But who is? How am I going to be out here trusting Brad Pitt, he's gone on the record saying he doesn't even have a skincare routine, by the way. Someone who's not known in any way for his skincare. He's the one I'm going to spend $360 buying serums from. That doesn't make any sense. Okay, so that's one. Another one that comes to mind, Addison Rae, the big TikToker. She launched a makeup line called Item Beauty. It was put into Sephora. So Sephora picked up the line and a year later dropped the line because once again, nobody cared. Despite the fact that she has these millions and millions and millions of followers on TikTok and is, the hottest thing since sliced bread, at least if you're under the age of 21, her folks weren't going to Sephora and buying this makeup because Sephora dropped them. Another one that comes to mind, again, another man with a skincare line. Did you know Pharrell launched a skincare line? I did not know that.
And again, who did? Okay, you had to have been somebody really up in these blogs, okay, because nobody is talking about this skincare line. It's called Human Race and launched with very minimal fanfare. And mind you, Pharrell has great skin. Everybody says how this man hasn't aged in the last 20 years. And yet, no one cared all that much. And his line is actually much more affordable. I think like the moisturizer in his line is like $40 or something like that. So it's not
presumably
because
he hasn't said that he doesn't use skincare either.
No, yeah, presumably. And I've even seen some reviews saying like, yeah, pretty good ingredients, pretty decent stuff, but on the whole, nobody is talking about it. So those are just a few examples, but I mean, I feel like I could name even more. And it's interesting because I do feel like once upon a time, I just think about when we were in middle school, all of the pop girls who launched fragrances and people bought those fragrances. Everybody had one and they got bought. And it just sort of felt like if you wanted to do your little get rich scheme and come out with a quick product, you could do it. And now I don't know if that is working quite as well. And I'll contrast the people whose brands haven't worked with the people who we've seen launch and have done, a really great job. So people like Tracee Ellis Ross, she launched her hair care line Pattern Beauty a few years ago. It has taken off. It is one of the best selling hair care lines at Ulta. She's, she's doing great. Selena Gomez with Rare Beauty, again, crushing it. One of the biggest brands sold in Sephora. Kim Kardashian, Skims. I can't open TikTok without seeing someone talk about Skims or a Skims dupe, right? And then, of course, Rihanna with Fenty. So there are definitely some winners in the celebrity game, no doubt about it. But then it just feels, at least, like there are a lot more people who aren't winning, a lot more celebs who aren't winning.
Of all of these unsuccessful celeb deals, I'm obviously trying to formulate my hypothesis and thinking about, all right, how does social media play here? How does the rise of the authentic influencer who, isn't a celebrity play here? Has that just quashed this whole paradigm? But then you're talking about celeb deals that have done really well. So, it's not that it's not viable, period. Just sounds like you have to do it right.
Exactly. Which I think leads us nicely into speculation, because I do really like to think about, and this is true for any consumer brands. I like thinking about consumer products and brands and what works and what doesn't. But I think it's worth giving our 2 cents on why we think some celebrity brands have really worked and really grown and really garnered favor with the general public, and why other brands have not.
Okay. Separates the winners from losers. First thing that comes to mind is there a real problem that's being solved? Right. So take the Brad Pitt example. If he's being quoted saying he doesn't have a skincare routine, then how is he going around selling a $300 serum? Right. Presumably it's not like an air serum, right?
Exactly.
This is just my aura that's been bottled, right? So how's that a thing?
Exactly. 100%. This is where I always like to start. You know, it's something I talk about a lot in my class with my students. If you're going to have an idea, I personally think the best consumer ideas are either solving problems or filling gaps or, you know, fulfilling an actual need, right? Because otherwise it's an also ran. Okay, another makeup brush line. Okay, another perfume. Great, we have 1,000 of them. So what is it about yours that works for me? Either me as the specific demo that you're targeting, me with this specific problem, but what is it that's going to make your thing work better? And I think if you look at the celebs who are winning, you can say that they really are filling a need. I mean, I think about Tracee Ellis Ross and her hair care line. First of all, her hair is gorgeous, but she's also got a very specific texture of hair. And it would make sense to me that she, in her lifetime, and she talks about this when she talks about starting the line, it would make sense to me that in her lifetime, she has really struggled to find products that work for her hair type because it's a very specific grade and texture of hair, right? I believe that. I don't have to wonder why would she want to start. I understand that, okay, you probably, and not only that, you grew up in the public eye. Your mom is Diana Ross. You probably had all sorts of people doing your hair who had no business doing your hair because they actually had never worked with anyone with hair like yours. And that frustration built, and that led you to want to fill this gap for other people who struggle when they think about the texture of their hair. So that makes sense to me. It feels like she's feeling a real need there. Oh, hold on. I'm getting a call. I should have put this on Do Not Disturb. Let me make a note of it. Okay. I'll just repeat that last part. So it makes sense to me that she's filling a real need.
It's interesting because if you think about a brand that just exists separate and apart from any celebrity, and that a tried and true method of marketing is to get a celebrity endorsement, the idea being that the celebrity just being attached is enough to propel the company forward, right? Rolex doesn't need Roger Federer on its, it still exists. It will still have sales, but they've decided that having Roger Federer, particularly around the time of Grand Slams and all their commercials, is good for their sales, right? And is an added benefit. Somehow that doesn't translate to having a celebrity brand, right? Different from an endorsement of an existing product. A celebrity brand, somehow the vibe of the celebrity is not enough. There needs to be a problem that it's solving.
Well, so
is that what we're saying?
I think so. And I also think if you are a celebrity and you start a brand, your celebrity does give you a big heads up, right? Or a big leg up, right? I mean, with Beyonce's Ivy Park and Adidas collab, we saw she did $93 million in 2021. She had that big splashy entrance in 2020 that we were all talking about, that literally no one else could have done it the way she did, right? No one else could just decide to launch an athleisure brand, send it to Reese Witherspoon and everybody and their mama and have them wear it, right? So she got a huge leg up. And I think from the perspective of if I'm not a celebrity brand, but I get a celebrity to wear it or endorse it or whatever, it's because I'm looking for that similar leg up. But that can't be my whole strategy. I don't think that's anyone's whole strategy. Rolex's whole strategy isn't Roger Federer, right? He's one part of it. And I think, unfortunately, when you see celebrity brands that aren't winning and aren't really taking market share, I feel like it's because they expected their celebrity to essentially be
the whole strategy.
Right.
And
it can be the boost, it can be the kicker,
exactly.
But it can't be the foundation.
Exactly. I think honestly, that's what it comes down to. Again, when you think about what's the gap you're feeling, what's the need, I look at someone like even Kim Kardashian with Skims. Mm-hmm. She was very clear when she launched that line. She is a shapewear addict, and I believe it. And mm-hmm. she's worn every brand, she's tried everything, and it still wasn't good enough to suit her needs. So she was really fanatical about creating a shapewear line that did the things that she wanted to do, that had, fit the sorts of dresses and clothes mm-hmm. that she wanted to wear, so on and so forth. You could believe that about Kim. It wasn't a stretch to think like, yes,
right.
You've tried all the shapewear. And as a result, you have formed a real educated opinion about like what's missing in the shapewear market. And I think contrast that to, again, an Addison Rae. She never really gave any indication that she was some beauty guru or beauty expert, mm-hmm. and certainly never gave any indication that the millions of brands that exist weren't catering to her, a young, mm-hmm. conventionally attractive white woman, right? So what is it that I'm supposed to be? How am I supposed to be on this journey with you? Understanding right. why this line is so important, right?
Right. And I in the past half year tried Skims and said she did it, despite how much she doesn't love the Kardashians. She tried a pair of Skims shapewear and she said it's phenomenal.
And that's what everyone says. That's what everyone says. Well, and that's the other thing. The product does have to be great. And, returning to Beyonce, first of all, I would never speak ill of Her Majesty the Queen. But I will say, now I didn't get the 2020 launch, but I did get the launch when she originally launched the line with Topshop. Mm-hmm. And the sizing, in my very humble opinion, was way off. I bought the size of clothes and athleisure that I typically wear, and everything was so small. I couldn't wear any of this outside of my house. Now, because I love Beyonce, I still wore it in my house. Okay. But I could not wear it outside my house. It was so small. And everybody said the same thing. Plus, not only did the items run small, but then also they didn't go up very high in size. And so, I bought it because it was Beyonce and I love Beyonce. But when it, in the continued launches, is that in the back of my mind? Like, is it going to fit? Is it going to fit weird? Absolutely. So I think, the product itself does have to be great. And I think the brand that you're standing on has to be one that you've got some real credibility in,
Right. Okay. So what else? What's your next hypothesis?
So I would say the other thing I tend to look at when I'm thinking about if a brand is going to be successful is like, what are the branding choices you've made? Mm-hmm. And do they tell a cohesive story around like why I, as a customer, should care about your brand? So some of the choices you make around your brand are, your positioning, where you carry it, your distribution, your price point, who you do have in your marketing campaigns, who you're partnering with, all of those sorts of things. Are those decisions cohesive? And do they tell me why I should care, right? So if we, again, go back to Brad Pitt's line, right? Straight out the gate, you priced everything at $300 and above. You have now told 90% of consumers they have no reason to care about this line. Because whether it's God's gift in terms of product or not, I cannot spend $300 on a serum. I can't do it. Not if I want to use it for, more, over and over. I can't have a monthly $300 bill for serum. I have a child. So and so he right out the gate is telling 90% of people this isn't for you. Yet when he launched, he had articles in BuzzFeed and US Weekly. He's on, Today's Show. Okay. Do you know who watches those and who reads those? Regular people. Okay. Just regular folks. Right. So those decisions are not cohesive. If you're going to launch a $300 serum, you should just be, publishing it on Raya, right? The dating app for the rich folks, or wherever else the rich folks hang. I wouldn't know. I'm not the ultra wealthy.
That's a dating app for the rich folks? Yeah,
Raya?
at least, yeah, it was. Now, I don't know if it still is, but originally it was supposed to be for like, not just wealthy, but like super, it was wealthy.
Oh, the
but like
connected,
also
the powerful?
super, exclusive, powerful.
The only person who I know, the only person I'm aware of who used Raya, and this makes sense now, was Shep from Southern Charm. They talk about him cheating on Taylor because he has an active Raya profile. So now this makes sense. I was like, what is Raya? Now I'm not rich enough or connected enough to know about it. That's what it is. Okay, got it.
It's for the wealthy and the celebs.
Okay.
But yes.
So this is where the serum should have been, is on Raya.
Or
BuzzFeed.
something like it, okay? Wherever the ultra wealthy, whatever it is they're reading, wherever it is they're hanging, talk about it there, because I don't know why I'm getting an article on BuzzFeed when there's no world where I'm spending $326 on a serum, right? So his choices just weren't cohesive. And even, I think about, again, I hate to say anything negative about Her Majesty, but I think about Beyonce's original choices with the brand, Ivy Park, to launch it with Topshop. I remember when I heard that, I was a little confused, about Beyonce and her original launch of Ivy Park. She originally launched it with Topshop, which is a British clothing retailer, right? But when I think about Beyonce, first of all, I think about Houston. She talks about Houston every other song. I think about Black culture because she stays repping Black culture. She did a whole homecoming themed show for Coachella. I think about the hood. I think about braiding hair. I just think black, blackity black, and Texas black at that. Right. So for this original launch to be a launch with a British clothing retailer, good for her. She secured the bag, but it felt a little confusing. So again,
a little disjointed.
So again, when you're thinking about like the branding choices companies are making and celebrities are making, are they cohesive and do they make sense? Do they tell me why I should care about your brand?
Well, okay, but how do you feel about the choice to then move to Adidas, right? Because it's Adidas she's parting ways with and has been less successful. So let's analyze that. Yeah.
So I will say, I thought the Adidas collab made much more sense, much more sense. And then what that brings me to is sort of my third thing that I'd like to think about. I think I look at a lot of different things. I can't tell you everything that we talk about at Yale because, those students pay me. But I would say the third thing that I think about is your marketing, right? So how are you getting the word out about your brand? Because I do think the Adidas collab made a lot of sense from a branding perspective. And of course, the original campaign was so splashy and so just like exciting. Like, what celebrity are we going to see wear this next? That said, I think from a marketing perspective, when you're a celebrity, you've got this built-in fan base, right? So, and you've got all this money. So I assume you're going to have a splashy launch. My question is, who am I going to see? What regular people am I going to see repping for your brand thereafter? That to me is how you're going to build up a real customer base, a real repeat customer base, a real customer acquisition funnel. Your celebrity is going to do that first set of work for you, but who's going to keep this engine running? And what it always felt like to me was I saw Beyonce repping this collab hard. Every time one of the campaigns, one of the seasonal launches dropped, it was all over her Instagram. She was dripping from head to toe in Ivy Park. But when I was on social media, I wasn't seeing it. Who that I know or who looks like me is out here talking about it and repping it and saying that it's so great. When Tracee Ellis Ross launched Pattern, I very quickly started seeing people posting about Pattern. Same with, Rare Beauty, right? Like same with Skims. Very quickly, like you said with your friend, people were talking about how effective the products were. And so from a marketing perspective, I think, you've got to put a lot of work into that UGC, which is user generated content. You've got to put a lot of work into getting it to influencers, and not just the mega influencers, not just the, Addison Rays of the world, but the micro influencers who really a lot of times start the uproar for a brand, right? Because their audiences are so engaged. And I don't know if we saw that happen with Beyonce.
And how much of that is in Beyonce's control? Like, is it about just identifying the right influencers and micro influencers and getting them the product to try? Is it directly contracting with people for UGC, or is it maybe still within control, but like a second order type of thing where it's like, well, the just products weren't that good. So then there wasn't this like virality element amongst micro influencers.
Well, and I think the question really highlights how all of these things are interconnected, right? Because yes, some of it is in your control as a brand. You can control sending products to micro influencers, mega influencers, getting it into a lot of hands. But once people get it into their hands, if they don't feel like it's filling a real gap or serving a real need, and it is just an also ran, right? Like getting back to that, what's the problem you're solving? Or what are the brand choices you've made that tell me why I should care about this over something else? Then, it might not necessarily help you that you've gotten it into a lot of hands. So, all of these pieces matter. And I think the best brands pay attention to all of these pieces. And I'm not counting Ivy Park out, by the way. I think, she's done now 2 different big partnerships, big collaborations. Maybe what this needs is for Beyonce to just do it her way, right? And not worry about a big partnership. That's interesting, because
I was just going to ask you, is Ivy Park done, or like what's this next step for them?
Yeah, I really wonder. I mean, I think Beyonce is obviously a business genius when it comes to music and music marketing and promoting her talent. And so I'm curious to see what the next step is for Ivy Park. I could believe that the next iteration is the best iteration. But I just think a lot would have to change. I don't know yet that she has really helped people understand why they need that athleisure brand over Gymshark, over Lululemon, over just straight up Adidas or Nike. I don't know that she's connected those dots for people. And I hope, given that this seems like it's been a real passion project for her, I hope that that's something she's able to do, third time at bat.
Yeah. Okay, so what's our verdict? But let's give a verdict on just overall like celebrity brands in 2023.
Ooh, what's my verdict? Well, yeah. I mean, I have a verdict for Beyonce and separately for the rest. Okay. My verdict for Beyonce, I think, I'll just underscore the fact that I do believe that she has the ability to pull this brand back up and make it relevant and exciting for a whole lot of people. I will always bet on Beyonce. So that's my verdict there. I just think she's got some real work to do. My verdict for celebrity brands overall is I think the bar is higher. I think people expect more. I think, inflation is high, banks are failing, folks are real tight with their money. And so it's not enough to just slap your name on something. I think there has to be a real purpose behind it. People have to really feel like they're able to connect with it. And I think that the fact that that bar is higher is a good thing, because like, how many celebrity skincare lines do we need? I want the bar to be high, because if you're going to take a chance at bat, like give me a real reason to care about it. So yeah, that's my verdict. What about you?
Yeah, I have a similar feeling. I do feel like where there's a will, there's a way. And the question is, how much do these celebrity brands like really care about the particular product? Is it just like another thing they're doing to feel like they're business people instead of just actors or singers, or I guess in Addison Rae's case, YouTube stars, or is this something they actually care about? This makes me think of, and it's never a good idea to introduce new facts into your verdicts, but I'm going to do it. Bethany, okay? Give me a second. Because she's working so hard at this makeup stuff. I think it's all kind of a con, but you can't say she's not working at it. Like, she is putting out so much content this, like, these drugstore hauls, these whatever, that if she put out a line, like, I bet you it would do decently well. Not because anyone, like, loves her skin or loves, you know, or thinks she's truly an expert, but she clearly is trying so hard that I think she would find people who would pick it up, you know? Yeah.
Well, and by the way, everyone, we're talking about Bethany Frankel. I, of course, know.
Oh, yes.
When you say Bethany, I know who we're talking about. Right. Yes. So I agree with you. She's got an established fan base, which, as we said, gets you but so far. But she's also put in the work to make it clear, like, here are the problems I have. She seems to have a lot of problems. There's a lot about the beauty space she doesn't like, but she's been very vocal about them. And I would say fairly consistent about them. So yeah, I think she could probably really connect with her audience if she did launch a brand. So, and I think, as we've been talking about, that's really important.
Time for Judge and Jury. Today, we're joining the rest of the world and talking about Gwyneth Paltrow's court controversy. In case you hadn't heard or been tuning in on YouTube, Gwyneth is in court because she's been sued for a crash. Not a car crash, but a skiing crash. Okay, so we're already talking about a very particular type of accident.
The richest, whitest thing you could say. Okay, she's in court, not over a car crash, literally over a crash that took place in Utah, was it Park City, Utah? On the slope. So
Park City, the Deer Valley Resort. Yes. Basically, the plaintiff in the case is a retired doctor named Terry Sanderson, who claims that he sustained multiple injuries, including brain injury and broken ribs, when Gwyneth Paltrow crashed into him on the slopes. Okay. Now, rather than put this to bed quickly with a settlement, Gwyneth decided not only to defend in court, but to countersue for a symbolic $1 in damages and legal fees. And as a result, we have gotten a ton of super bizarre, super hilarious court testimonials in the process. And so the question is, was the decision to go to court instead of settle a display of good or bad judgment?
Yeah, man, oh man. I'm of two minds on this. My immediate reaction when I saw that she was fighting this and going to court, and then when the quotes started coming out, like literally one of her quotes was, I think they asked her, like, how have you suffered or what have you lost? And her answer was, well, I lost half a day of skiing. So, Gwyneth, you're already the least related.
Well, she has to justify the $1 in damages she's seeking. That's why they asked the question. But it does come off. And that's the thing is, if she, with her countersuit, she knows she's going to get asked that question. And she knows she's going to give that answer. And so really, is that good or bad judgment? It's crazy.
I think my original thought was bad judgment because Gwyneth Paltrow is already the least relatable person in the world, right? And now she was just going to put like an even bigger spotlight on how outrageously unrelatable her life is by sitting in this courtroom and talking about her woe is me on the Park City slopes of Utah, right? So my original thought was this is bad judgment. Everyone I know, every CEO I know, every leader I know, everyone I know has had to eat a judgment and pay out a settlement they didn't want to pay, they knew they were right. Okay, I'm not talking about people who were wrong out here doing bad shit. I'm talking about people who knew they were right, but ate the cost anyway because it wasn't going to be worth the emotional turmoil, the resources to go to court, and just to drag it out, right? And in her case, the reputational risk. So that was my immediate reaction. This does not seem smart. We're all now talking about you and talking about this ridiculous court case when you could have literally swept all this under the rug with probably a cool $500,000, which is nothing to her, and an NDA. Okay, so that's what I originally thought. But now I've had the chance to think about it some more. And also I've kept up with the testimony. First of all, I'm not convinced that she's not wrong. That was too many negatives.
Okay. Keep going. No. You think she might be right.
I think she might be right. I think I might believe her that she wasn't in the wrong and that she didn't cause this accident. Right. And
So to be clear, she's countersuing because she's saying actually this dude hit her. Like,
exactly.
He came from behind and hit her. So why is she being sued? That's her position. Mm-hmm.
That's her position, and she has presented some evidence to that effect. Namely, she's brought in some witnesses who have like testified and said like basically as soon as she got down the mountain, she was like, this dude hit me, and she was really upset about it. And I think maybe he may have sent a text to somebody like essentially saying like, I'm sorry, or I think he may have apologized to her and other people heard him apologize to her. So for one thing, I'm thinking, you know what? Maybe Gwyneth is right and she's telling the truth here, in which case I can understand wanting to defend yourself in court and not have people just get to lie on you and still pay them $500,000. And the other thing I'm thinking from the reputational risk standpoint is it a reputational risk when you're already Gwyneth Paltrow? You see what I'm saying? Like, there's like, as crazy as these quotes are, none of it is shocking. None of it is shocking for Gwyneth. Okay. If somebody else had said it, it would really be shocking. But we all know that Gwyneth is, living in the cosmos as it relates to the rest of us. Right. So
that is correct.
Is there really a reputational risk? So now I'm sort of on the side of good judgment. And I didn't think I'd get here, but I kind of think that's where I am. Where are you?
I don't know if this is fun for people when we constantly agree, but I totally agree. And precisely for the same reason. So, like, separate and apart from all this court stuff, there's a video that's going around on TikTok of her talking about her diet and how what she really loves for lunch is bone broth. Okay. And so everyone's responding to it being like, oh, bone broth, that like super nutrient, calorically dense food item, bone broth. That's what you have for lunch every day. Like, and people are tearing her to shreds, rightfully so, because that is a very Gwyneth Paltrow goop answer. Right. And as crazy as some of the testimony coming out of the court case is, it is more normal than most of the nonsense that comes out of Gwyneth Paltrow's goop mouth. Yeah. Yeah. So, and I think you're right. I believe her. There's just a lot of evidence coming out that makes it seem like she probably was hit. She's really pissed that she's been sued, like the gall of this person to sue her when he was the cause of the crash. And I respect this. I respect this stance, like, yeah, it is frustrating, even though people do it all the time and have to settle for things where they weren't actually, in the wrong. Like, it is kind of nice to see someone who seems like on the right side actually getting their justice. So I find all of this very satisfying.
Yeah. As someone who has had to settle when I shouldn't have had to. And again, I really don't know any CEOs who haven't at some point. Right. And I can't speak on the particulars because I too signed NDAs, but as someone who has had to spend money over something I shouldn't have had to spend money on, I do feel a certain, just like sense of justice and like almost, I'm not going to go this, not all the way, but almost kindredness with Gwyneth Paltrow. Now, it can only go but so far, okay, because she's still Gwyneth Paltrow. But yeah, if someone runs into you on a ski slope or anywhere on a bus stop and then sues you, you're going to feel a type of way. And I can understand her saying, you know what, I'll spend the money and I'll look silly in court, whatever it takes because this is too far. This is too far.
I agree with you. And this might be the one time I will say, great judgment, Gwyneth.
Great judgment. All right, guys, that is it for this week. As always, we hope you're loving the show. And if you are, please be sure to subscribe and leave us a 5-star review. And don't forget to tell a friend about the podcast.
Social, I'm Daddy DMC on TikTok, and KJ is I'm KJ Miller.